And I guess, Rebecca, you're up.
All right, so a lot of what I'm going to say is kind of a repeat because I've already done this. But for those of you that haven't met me or maybe don't know about me, I'm running for US Senate. I am a mom to a large family. We homeschool. We have a farm. I have a business based around our family. In the summertime, I do farmers markets, local foods, small farms. That's like my real passion. So I got kind of caught up in this, I guess you would say, because I saw an opportunity to have a kind of message where there was the kind of message that I would give is lacking from everybody else that's running. Last time around, it was Amy Klobuchar versus the Republican candidate who ended up being Royce White. And I come from, before I was all those other things, I was an Army veteran, or still am an Army veteran, I guess. But I spent 2 tours to Iraq as a combat medic. I did, first tour was in Ramadi during the Battle of Fallujah from 04 to 05. Second tour was in Baghdad during the surge, 06, 07. And I came out of those experiences not willing to prop up the military-industrial complex, the defense industry, everything that I saw it very clearly after what we went through. That the problem in our country and the problem that we face overseas when we're going to these nonstop, continual, never-ending wars, it's not people like us. It's the people at the top that are getting rich off of making sure that those wars always continue. And so then they have incentive to keep going because they're making a lot of money. They're showing, they send us, the people that are, come from a background where I didn't have anybody just handing me things or money or college and telling me what to do next. I wasn't born into that lifestyle. So that was why I joined the Army and then got caught up in the wars as a result. And so a lot of kids in my situation use the military as a way to get that structure, get that training, that background. But then what we do with people that are willing to volunteer for defense of our country is to use their willingness to sacrifice in a way that is immoral and evil. Because we shouldn't be sending soldiers into constant and continual warfare and taking advantage of the sacrificial nature of the military to further line somebody else's pockets. That's what happened in Iraq. I saw it firsthand. Our unit, we went through a lot. If you ever want to ask me stories, just probably now's not the time. But coming out of that, taking a campaign like for US Senate and being able to speak on the nature from a unique background, because not everybody came from a veteran or a military background. And then those of us that even did serve, not everybody saw combat. And then even less of them were women. So having that and being able to speak on it in a way at a time where people are listening because you're running for a seat, a big seat. This is US Senate is not a small thing. But we did it last time, and overall, we did really well, not actually knowing a lot about what we were doing. Would you agree, Chip? We were kind of just taking this and flying with it by the seat of our pants, and only spent $2,500 on that entire campaign, and came out of that with the most votes that any libertarian has ever gotten on a non-presidential race. And with very little manpower, very little money, just a lot of spirit and a lot of energy. That was all we had, and did well. So we were just coming out of, leaving Afghanistan last time. We weren't even in active war last time around. Now we are. And in between last time I ran and this time, I wasn't sure if I honestly wanted to do this because this is a lot of work. But then we bombed Iran. And if there was ever a situation that kind of reignited that anger, that they're going through the same things that they should have learned through Iraq, that they should have learned through Afghanistan, and they're doing it again at the expense of us. And somebody has to say it for what it is. The Democrats are not going to do it because AIPAC is funding them. The Republicans are not going to do it because AIPAC is funding them. And I'm tired of fighting Israel's war and losing brothers and sisters in the process. And even worse than going through and after doing that is that getting the phone call just on some random afternoon that somebody else decided that the last battle that they couldn't win was the one at home. And I'm tired. So we're going to fight this, and we're going to do this again. And this time, especially having on the verge of having boots on the ground in Iran, and but go at this from a position that takes actual Americans into account, the people like us at the bottom, where nobody is speaking for us at the top. And I want to. So I want to be given that opportunity to do that again. We do have some things we need to overcome with petitioning. Refusing to run as a major party candidate does come with some challenges. But, I think that these are obstacles that we can overcome because I think that we're on the right side of history. And that time will tell that everything that we are doing now is going to be, those of us that toe the line are going to be the ones that come out on top in the history books. Because we're taking the position of righteousness in this. And we have to say it in a time when nobody else can or will. So that's what I want to do. Other things that I would address is the national debt, which I consider a greater national security risk than Iran. Overregulation of industry. And then kind of just coming at this from a humanistic position. This would be an anti-war, pro-human campaign. And I think that if there was ever a time where people were very anxious for that message, that time is now. And I think that we can do even better than 2% or whatever it was we got last time around. I think there's a very real possibility that we could come out of this between the 5 and 8% mark. And that's where the real power is. Or if all the cards fall right, maybe we even win it. I think that's a very real possibility. And if that's the case and that happens, every political party has to be represented on every single committee in the Senate at the federal level. That would make me a very busy person being in DC. And they wouldn't know it hit them. They would just have no idea. But they'll find out. So thank you very much.
Your position is clearly non-interventionist. I would like you to expand on why that is. I remember in a college course, the professor asked us, should the U.S. be policing the world? We definitely have the capability of doing it. And I remember thinking, I don't know. And now when I listen to Scott Horton's show, the question would be phrased, absolutely not, we can't do it. So when in school, they're telling us that we can with a bias toward being a global hegemon. Tell us, and please explain to people that are close to our position. I listen to the Patrick Bet-David show. They are really sliding toward global domination in their opinions. Can you convince them?
Well, as far as school teaching that we can police the world, I mean, that's indoctrination. That's not truth, right? And we can't. We don't have the manpower. We don't have the money. We're already $39 trillion of debt. So there's no money. And I can tell you that the active duty military in itself is incapable of taking on a mission of that degree for as long as it is. The only way that they could do that is by enacting the draft, which I would also stand against because we're not slaves. We're not to do their bidding, right? So the non-interventionist policies would be every single troop, American troop that is on all of these bases, whether it be Korea or Japan, Italy, ships off the coast of Iran, South America, they all need to come home. Like, if we have a border problem, the best thing our military could do is protect our borders, not other people's borders. We can't neglect what's happening at home and then expect to be seen as the shining example of how things work the way they are when we are mismanaging ourselves. So pull all the troops home. That's how far my non-interventionist would go, is that all of these places that we have American soldiers, Marine sailors, airmen, whoever it is, they all just need to come back home. And then the wars, everything that happens, and every time somebody says, hey, we need you to come do this, I'm sorry, but they've got to figure out how to manage themselves without us.
Question for you, Rebecca. So Thomas Massey recently put in what he called the Prime Act, and that passed through committee, and so that's going to be in the next Farm Bill. And the Prime Act removes, I don't know if it's all or some federal regulations regarding our food supply. So some of that would be like FDA rules for meat processing and other agricultural regulations. You've already talked about how there's like way over regulation of our food supply. I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about what some of those regulations are.
One of them is FDA related. So when you have livestock, sometimes things happen to your livestock. You need access to medications. A couple of years ago, the FDA decided that farmers would no longer be able to get access to medications that would be able to help their livestock. The only way to get access to them now is to go through a vet. Do you know what we also have an extreme shortage of is livestock vets. So if you don't have a livestock vet in your area, or if you live like where we do, and we have one for the entire region, to be able to address something that happens in your animal quickly is next to impossible. And by the time you realize something's going wrong with your animal, time is already of the essence, because they compensate and then they crash very quickly. This is considered, like, we used to be able to get things like penicillin, tetracyclines kind of medications. So if there was, something that needed for an antibiotic, we could have that already on hand, because inevitably your cows are always going to go down Friday night after the livestock vet has gone to bed. And so, like I said, time is of the essence. So that would be one thing I would address to be able to make it easier. With having FDA inspectors, that allows us to be able to go to a processing plant with an animal and be able to ship it across state lines. The FDA inspector does, the USDA inspector does. Now, Minnesota also has their own Department of Agriculture, who is they're just as much fun as the USDA. But because of their regulations, have you ever noticed how few dairy farms there are left? Where are they? They're disappearing at a very fast rate, because it costs too much, and most dairy farmers are losing money by milking cows because they get so little money per pound of milk. It's almost criminal. Well, it is criminal. Otherwise, I wouldn't be running about this. Anyways, but so dairy industry is hurting. Meat, livestock, your ranchers are hurting. They just went to a policy, and I'm not sure this actually, because a lot of USDA policy they don't go through legislation. They just tell you what you're going to do next. And they enforced cattle ranchers to put a microchip in their livestock, but it's so it can be traceable. It's digital. The cost of that is astronomical, right? Especially when you're talking about beef producers in Nebraska who literally have thousands of head of cattle. So anyways, that's a number of things. These are just examples of what they're doing. And if you're wondering why the prices of beef is going up, this is one of those reasons. But they're also forcing cows not even be able to cross over the border out of Mexico, and they ship our beef from the producers that do produce it in the United States to China to package it and then ship it back because they can package it cheaper in China. That doesn't make any sense either. So we're not we don't have, we should not be reliant, we should be independent, and our food supply should be the same.
Alright. So one of the big things that Maha has failed at is, and I'm going to butcher it, but glass Roundup. And also like how Big Ag is kind of like bullying our farmers for the pressure them to sell. How I just kind of want to know like your base thoughts and how we can get Roundup out of our food system or on a path towards that, and kind of like how you can, you know, not to say it, but how you can kind of help make America healthy again from your perspective.
So in the case of Roundup and Trump issuing a national making it a basis of national security, what he also did when he did that was to, as a result, give immunity to the people who are creating Roundup and distributing it. And the reason that they did that is because there are a lot of lawsuits coming out right now that prove that Roundup is causing a multitude of cancers, right? And so they have literally poisoned our food supply. Almost everything that you eat has GMO corn, GMO soy, you know, all of these things that rely on Roundup to be able to be successful in the fields. Commercial farmers are pushed into this, well, and partially it's willingly because they can make a lot of money off of subsidies. You may have seen like some of those farms that like their house is way nicer than other people's, like they drive the nice stuff. Like some of those machines that they use are like hundreds of thousands of dollars for farm equipment, right? And so if we take the regulation off of agriculture, which I can tell you from a small farmer perspective that regulation is all agriculture knows. Everything that you eat and consume is regulated to the point where they have regulated opportunity out of agriculture. And right now we're at a situation where we have the average age of the farmer is in the late 50s. The price per acre of farming land has gone exponentially high. You can't get new land, so you have young farmers or people like myself, and we were literally just talking about this. We would like to be able to, you know, buy a plot of land so that we can expand and do other things, but there's no land. And the land that you can find costs way more money than you could possibly make off of that by using it as farmland, because it's geared towards corporate, you know, housing industries. Somebody comes in and builds homes on them and this sells them for top dollar. And so we're losing a lot of our agriculture. We're losing a lot of our food security because we rely so heavily on produce out of California and Mexico and all these places transport food in, which has created food deserts in agricultural communities. And that doesn't even make any sense. So 20 years from now, what will end up happening at the rate that we're on is that the small farmer, the average size of the farm is just going to keep getting bigger, and the amount of people who are farming is going to keep getting smaller until everything that you eat comes from a corporate entity, not a farmer. And that's the path that we're headed on. Roundup is, like I said, I am in full, and I know like there's probably going to be some disagreements on that. This is fine. But I am in support of banning Roundup as a whole because it is a poison and it is literally hurting people. And part of the non-aggression principle is we're not allowed to do things that hurt people. But when it has become 100% our food supply dependent on a chemical that is causing cancers, that's harming us and killing people. So there has to be a method to be able to get farms off of dependence of the government. And that includes taking regulations off of farmers. That includes freeing it up, the caps that farmers like they're only allowed to sell a certain amount and then they're capped. It doesn't matter whether they have more in their field or not. They're not allowed to sell it. And that's federal regulation. The farm bill that the Congress passes, 75% of that goes to SNAP for low-income people. Very little of that actually goes to farmers. And I've never seen any of it. So I don't know. Hopefully that answers your question, but this is one of those topics where I'm like, oh, yeah, I get to talk about this. Anyways.